My name's Robyn. It's good to meet you. I'm the founder of a creative studio called Studio Gradients. It's made up of a few people from the Biden-Harris campaign, of which I was the senior creative advisor on. Now, what we're going to do in this talk is tell you about my last 5 Novembers. So what I want you to do right now, for the moment, is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, exhale, let all that anxiety go. Then let's talk about November 2016. Here we go. It's November 2016, Election Day. I'm at my office at a large tech company in Seattle. I'm acting like I'm working, but I'm really just refreshing Twitter and the New York Times, watching that needle go back and forth from Trump to Hillary. And I'm waiting to see when the final results are going to come in, and the first results. Because we're on the West Coast, I learned about Kentucky while I'm still at the office. It goes to Trump, which essentially sets the tone for the evening. Now, looking around, everyone in the office was basically going about their day with ease. And I wondered if they were also having a panic attack like me, but maybe they were just really good at hiding it. I packed my bags for the day and head to Montana, which is a little dive bar nearby that serves pretty good pizza. The night started bad and basically got worse. At first, I was sipping nice whiskey, a little scotch, expecting a celebration with some wine. But once the results started to pour in, I started to go for the cheap stuff, bourbon, PBR, that kind of drink. And as the night went on, the bar got pretty quiet. Eventually, Tom Perez went out on stage at the Javits Center to tell everyone to go home. The writing was on the wall. We had lost. I packed my things and jumped on the bus back to my studio apartment. Looking around on that bus, it seemed like no one was really fazed. Everyone was either looking at their phones or listening to music, beginning to drift off into sleep. They're tired from their day. And I couldn't stop thinking about if they knew that we had lost, or if they even saw it as a win. And if they did know that we lost, what did it mean to them? How is it going to affect their lives? November 2017. Now, within the first year of President Trump's term, he had already scaled back critical components to the Affordable Care Act. He'd fought against letting trans people serve in the military, let alone use the restroom. He advocated for a Muslim ban. He fired James Comey. He battled the media, and disinformation was flying from literally every direction. Now, I wanted to do something about it, but I was really in no shape to help other people. Truth is, I could barely help myself. I'd always used drinking as a way to cope with the world around me. And the problem with that is that there's a very fine line between a coping mechanism and a defense mechanism. And the longer I tried to cope with the world, the one that I was terrified would hurt me, the more layers that were hard and very protective I developed in order to defend my place within it. It was an exhausting and vicious cycle, and one that led to many nights alone with a drink in my hand. And so I left one tech job for another. This one's in New York, but it really didn't help. Growing up on the East Coast, I took advantage of waking up with the country. But in Seattle, I always felt really far behind. I was consistently trying to catch myself up with the news of the day, which honestly was no easy feat considering the hangovers that I had every morning. And sure, the change of scenery was nice, but it did nothing to stop my drinking, and soon enough, I began to isolate myself again. November 2018. This is the first time I met Jess, and the first time I met Jess, she was late. So Jess was parking her moped outside while I was stuck inside. I was slouched over this desk at an AA meeting. It was a Sunday night, which meant that we were going around the room reading from the big book, which is sort of like the Bible of AA, pausing after each paragraph for discussion. On Tuesday nights, we would have been going around a circle, sort of sharing our feelings based on a speaker. And on Thursdays, we would have been going around a circle, talking about a specific topic. Each night had its own specific thing. This is Sunday, and Jess and I are reading from the big book. And she wasn't even supposed to be there that night, to be honest. But earlier in the evening, she had crashed her moped and didn't want to take it all the way out to the other side of the city. And Jess stands out. She's got bright pink hair with brunette roots, is wearing way more denim than Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake combined at the VMAs. I've been terrified of getting a sponsor. Attending meetings was one thing, but actually letting someone in and doing the work, that was another. But if there was going to be anyone that was going to be able to help me, it'd be Jess. So toward the end of the meeting, I pulled her aside and I asked her to sponsor me. And thankfully, she agreed. She snuck me away from the crowd of smokers outside the meeting and began to ask me what my goals were for sobriety. And I had this real sort of brute naivety, and I told her that I wanted to help elect the next president of the United States. She understandably looked at me like I was crazy and also a little bit confused, but nonetheless helped me get to work. And the first tool she gave me was a fill in a blank sentence. It's one that I'm going to give you right now. And if you have a pen and paper, I hope you write it down. It goes like this. I have resentment at because I fear that something will happen. And in this process, I learned that every drink I had was basically a result of a resentment paired with the fear that stemmed from. So I had resentment at my father because I feared that one day I'd also die from multiple sclerosis. I feared that he never got the chance to teach me the things that he needed to. I'd fear that I'd always push people away when life gets a little too hard, like he did. And I have resentment at myself because I fear that I won't amount to anything, that this all was just sort of white noise. I have resentment at my design work because I fear that it doesn't have a huge impact in the world, that I could have made something better. In the corporate world, this really sort of drove a nail into my head, and I had a hard time really letting it go. And I rewrote that sentence, filling in resentments and fears over and over again. I did this for months. I filled notebook after notebook, resentments and fears. And the good thing is that little by little, I felt confident to go back to work. And that brings us to November 2019. So one night before one of my AA meetings, I had caught a video of Beto O'Rourke going viral online. I'm sure you saw this. He was asked a question about football players kneeling, and with a tremendous grace defended the decision for them to kneel. And I told myself if I ever got out of the hell I was in, he was the guy I wanted to work for. He had everything that I believed in, a strong backbone of character. That's where I thought the country should go. And so when I found myself sober and ready to work, that's what I did. And shortly after landing in El Paso, there was a mass shooting at the Walmart near the Cielo Vista Mall. I'd been going to this mall regularly since joining the campaign because honestly, it had the only Apple store within hundreds of miles in it. That's just because Texas is really big. It's also really beautiful. The first move I made after hearing of the shooting was leaving my apartment where the man was putting internet in my apartment. I told him to go home, and then I ran to the office. It was a Saturday, and basically everybody was at the office, and it was sort of a dark tone where people didn't really know what to do. We were all waiting on the word. So the first move I made is I opened up my computer. I opened up Figma, taking off everything from our current website and replacing it with a black background and a message from Beto with information for families to meet up with their loved ones, as well as information on how to donate blood. Working with our dev, we got this up pretty quick, and then I ran to donate blood myself. By the time I made it to the donation center, a line was stretched around the block twice over to donate blood, because that's exactly who El Paso is. And over the next few days and weeks and months, I watched Beto help heal El Paso. I watched El Paso heal itself. And though our campaign wasn't viable, I couldn't have been more proud to work for it. When Beto talked about taking AR-15s and AK-47s away at the debate, I was proud to put that on a t-shirt. And days after the shooting, when he said, "This is fucked up" on CNN, I was proud to put that on a shirt too. And the wild thing about that little moment, "This is fucked up," was, it happened in the morning. It was actually the first morning since the shooting that I had slept in. So I woke up to a call from digital director Rob Flaherty, who had been sending me texts throughout the morning that we needed to get something out. So I grabbed my laptop, made a few mock-ups, and the one that we ended up going with was basically the one that said, "This is fucked up" over and over and over again. It repeated. And we did this because one night when I was a teen, I'd gone to this party that had gotten busted. The officers were letting off basically everybody for drinking. But when one of them saw that I was wearing a shirt that repeated the words, "I support same-sex marriage," he almost didn't let me go. Not because of the underage drinking, because of the message on my shirt. And it's funny how those personal experiences can influence our creative work. It's funny how sometimes we can't let them go and they creep back in times where you don't expect them. Anyways, your campaign with a message is what I'm trying to tell you. It was more than just an election, something bigger than us. The day after we dropped out of the race, I couldn't sleep. So at 3 a.m, I turned on the TV and I watched School of Rock on HBO. Kid you not, this is what losing your presidential campaign looks like, watching School of Rock at 3 a.m. Then at 5 a.m, Orange County came on. And by the time the credits rolled and Pete I think Pete Jordan's his name. Pete Jordan's Lose You was playing. I grabbed my shoes and headed off to the cafe that was open at that point. And while on the walk to the cafe at an intersection, I saw Beto in his truck on a drive, and he honked at me, pulled over, and thanked me for the work the team and I did. Sure, I was sadly lost, but in that conversation, I knew both of us weren't done, that there was more work to be done, that there was more work to be done. And that takes us to November 2020, the year that I really want to talk with you about. So, like I said, losing an election has a way of getting under your skin. It's like an itch you can't scratch, but you're relentless in trying. It stays with you. And I had only one thing on my mind all throughout 2020, and that was November. Every morning I woke up, I looked at websites and social for all the active campaigns. Pete, Amy, Bernie, Trump. I wanted to see what every single person was doing and why they were doing it. I wanted to understand their strategy. Now, Karana Magwood had been leading the Biden design throughout the primary, and I was always really impressed with the work that she was doing. It was clear, concise, and leading into American imagery beautiful. So in January 20, I went up to Philadelphia to see everything in action. Though it might have been bleak at that time, I had done the math in my head, and everything in my gut told me that Biden was going to be the nominee. So Karana, myself, and Rob, we all started to talk. And in March, when the pandemic hit, I joined the campaign. Now, what I want to do right now is walk you through some of that work. So when we talked about the whole campaign, everything was sort of like, driven around this idea that we were really alone and we needed to connect with each other and we needed to feel personal. So we looked at everything that we had: photography, color, typography, and of course, gradients. And here's what some of this work looked like. So one of the first things that we tackled, and you'll hear from Pablo tomorrow, was illustrations. In the primary campaign, we had the luxury of incredible photography because we were consistently doing speeches that were doing incredibly well with great audiences. But once the pandemic hit, we were sort of isolated from that photography, and we went a couple of months without even a single photo to use. And because of that, we had to figure out a way to use illustration. And this is where Pablo came in. Blush helped us basically set up everything. So if we wanted to do a social graphic or anything like that with different sort of type, different sort of flow, this is how we did it. We were able to use this plugin to basically drop in anything that we needed to message-wise with anybody that we wanted to. Whether they were going to hold an American flag or a pride flag, we knew that we had them. That solved the people problem. There was still a bunch of other stuff to do, right? I'm going to sort of scroll through some of this work here. We started to add a bunch of color to a lot of our style. This included sort of neon colors at points for hope over fear and unity over division. We drove that for truth over lies as well. We started to lean really deep in gradients when it came to Wisconsin students and basically any other coalition that we worked with. We drove really strong typography for merch. Previously the campaign, the primary had been using something called Brother 1816, which was an interesting typeface, but it was a little bit too bubbly for the moment when we hit the pandemic. So I had been talking with Jonathan Heffler about typography a ton, and I told him that I basically needed two sounds, a major chord and a minor chord. A major chord could be something that was really loud and verbose, and a minor chord could be something that was a little bit quieter and sort of like a bridge. Because Joe is very good at speaking strong sentences and sort of steers away from phrases, this sort of structure for typography enabled us to do a lot of different things. Whereas you previously heard Obama say, "Yes, we can," or Hillary say, "Stronger together," President Biden will say something like, "We're in a battle for the soul of the nation." Battle for the soul of the nation is a wonderful line, but it's also 7 words, 4 of which you want to forget. Battle Soul Nation is really the ones that you want to keep with. And that's how we sort of set up the typography through little bits here. And then going through, as we started to build out the campaign, we had to sort of figure out transportation in the world of COVID. Our theory here with the bus, which is notably the most vibrant political bus I've surely seen or made for that matter, we wanted us to stand out on the road. This was a campaign that was excitement. We were in the battle for the soul of the nation. Didn't have to feel bleak and depressing. We could push it. We also did the same for the train tour once we started to move there. The bits that we used here, we sort of broke our brand and added all these interesting colors and pushed like a sort of a map of a space to play with. And then, of course, the plane, which I'm sure some folks saw, we actually made this in Figma. Because everybody was on the road all the time, we needed a way to sort of share files back and forth quickly. And collaborating in Figma was essentially the same as collaborating in a Google Doc, which was great for us. So we were able to see what this plane was going to look like at night, whether it was going to be in the day, or whether we were just going to be on a stopover in any given city. And then on social, this is where we started to drive the real gradients. So whether it was going to be a quote graphic from a tweet from Joe Biden or Joe, whether it was going to be sort of a sort of rough texture in text talking about how we need justice, or just a line that was talking about how we're going to be the movement that beat Donald Trump. Every single thing that we did had sort of a rhythm and cadence to it. And because we had language around music when it came to the type, we were able to sort of transfer over as quickly as possible. And this translated not only to the main JB brand, but it also went for Vote Joe too. Some of you might have seen that on Instagram. We ran a Vote Joe account, which basically leaned into the wildest stuff that we could come up with. So Chromatica, we weren't afraid of it. We drove directly towards it. Battle for the Solar Nation, we added much more luscious qualities to it and let the outer glow live. Whenever we sort of saw the opportunity to drive these really intense colors and this really sort of vibrant style of design, this is where we did. So it didn't matter if we were talking about absentee ballots being counted, whether we needed you to keep the faith, if we were driving through messaging like science over fiction or truth over lies. Every single thing that we did hit on this idea of speaking to our audience and speaking through with a strong vibrancy. And it was fun to see us get away with these little points here. We're adding these sort of tones that were very interesting and textured. And it met the audience exactly where they needed to be met. Now, when it came to Oppo, we had sort of a different strategy around everything. Historically, Democrats have framed Republicans as this sort of blood red, mean, scary thing. And I'd always had like a really challenging time with this. Growing up as a queer teen in rural Maine, I was obviously bullied, and what I always wanted to do was take away the power my bully had. I never wanted to give them more power. Sam Esmail has a show called Mr. Robot, and he did this beautifully. So when I took this job, I called Sam and I basically discussed how he pulled off portraying his bullies. We talked about the importance of eye contact and how bullies often fell into the background of a shot. And basically, after some intense late night exploration, we started to find a visual voice for all our Oppo, consistently making sure that Trump rarely made eye contact directly with you, successfully removing his power in some specific way, or alluding to the notion that he wasn't actually ready to leave. Now, because of how fast our campaign was moving and how fast the country was moving, we knew rapid response was going to be a huge critical component to our success. And as hiring opened up, we grew our design team from 3 to 25 in what felt like overnight. Karana and I were often hiring folks who had never used Figma before. So to prepare the team for what to come, we basically ran a multitude of mock debates. That meant that we watched live Biden-Palin, we watched live Biden-Ryan, we pushed Trump-Clinton, and even Pence's 2012 gubernatorial debate. And honestly, if you've never seen Pence's 2012 gubernatorial debate, I highly suggest it. He actually debated a person who ended up being on Survivor, which is like truly one of the most absurd things that I've ever seen in my life. Regardless, so we had to get everything to work here with like a full team, right? And at first, we sounded like a band out of tune when we came to like making merch or trying to run rapid response. We're trying to do so many things at once, but we hadn't really fleshed it out. And what we learned over these mock debates was that we got really comfortable with each other. We started to feel everything out. And all of a sudden, our orchestra became really beautiful, and we sounded more like a symphony. And what this means in the debate nights was that, we're essentially in a Google Hangout, and in my right ear is the design team, and in my left ear is the broader digital team. On one screen, I'm reading the closed caption from the debate. On the other, I'm in Slack giving creative direction, or in Figma checking on status. It was a real symphony, trust me, I'm telling you. And we were able to design things like social graphics, microsites, animation, merch, and of course, the infamous Flyswatter. The crazy thing about this Flyswatter, it was really done in 5 or 10 minutes. Earlier throughout the day, there had been such a large conversation online about this idea of using plexiglass between Harris and Pence because of COVID-19. Republicans were using it as a talking point to try and attempt to show weakness, but it really wasn't landing. An idea that Zach and I had in the middle of this process was, what if that we were able to find a union printer who printed plexiglass, and maybe we could put Harris's portrait on it, and that could be our rapid response moment. But to find that amount of union-based plexiglass in a very little time is actually quite the challenge. So I went into that debate assuming that we weren't going to be doing any merch at all. And Zach and I were just sort of on standby waiting to see what happened while the team pulled out a ton of social creative. And then once we saw the fly hit on Pence's head, it was pretty clear what was going to need to happen. Zach and I got on a call. We tried to figure out if we can get a union printer who makes Flyswatters. Thankfully, we were able to find one. Within a couple minutes, he had sent me a link to basically a JPEG that had 5 variants of Flyswatters. We picked the blue one in the middle of that. Eric and Dom were working on the typography. We had this great line from the team, Truth Over Flies. We dropped our logo on it, and it was out the door. This is the symphony working in beautiful harmony, just the ability to collaborate together on merch. Whether this is crazy t-shirt or a fly swatter, doesn't matter. As long as we're sort of talking together and singing to each other, that's the good spot that we want to stay in. And this, of course, all leads to what we know as election night. Everything on the campaign, we basically only had one shot at it. And election night isn't really different by any means. Our campaign had relied on gradients to bring about emotion, so it made sense to do one here. It just kind of had to be the ultimate gradient. I had been obsessed with gradients since attending this AA meeting, the same one that I met Jess in. And somebody was sharing on Tuesday night about how they had trouble finding serenity. And essentially what they said was that they'd been sober for a really long time, but they were still in their head and they weren't really finding a higher power and weren't really connecting with what was supposed to be happening at their moment of sobriety. And this all culminated to one single morning. Really early, they woke up, they were next to the beach, and they went down and watched the sunrise. And for the first time in their life, they felt true serenity. And I thought that's the exact feeling that I want folks to have for the election. I want people to feel that moment of serenity because I think it's so important to visually meet what the moment is asking for. But it's really hard to describe what that feeling is like. So for direction, I had the team actually watch Roberto Benigni's acceptance speech for the Oscars. If you haven't seen it, Life is Beautiful is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And when Roberto accepts the award, he jumps on the steps and he goes full like Titanic style, like everything is so beautiful. And he gets these words out of his mouth of just pure joy. And that's the exact feeling that I wanted to express with this gradient. So we started to play with a couple options. Where we landed was this idea of a sunrise, but not just a sunrise, something that moved. So at night, when folks were waiting for the result, we watched the gradient go from twilight deep into the brightest, strongest color, as if the sun was rising on a new day in this country. And this became what we now know as our victory gradient. And our victory gradient worked on multiple different things. If you head to joebiden.com right now, you'll see our victory gradient in action. For typography, decimal had been leading the show for the majority of our campaign, but during the actual election night victory and for the inauguration and the White House brand and so forth, we flipped that. So Mercury now takes the lead, and we were able to sort of less fight for our place in this country and more deliver a strong notion for the country. Now, what does this all mean? It all means that we need to talk about the next 5. As I look back on everything of the last 5 years, think about how absurd everything has been. Think about how crazy it is that I'm even here at all talking with you right now. In 2016, I could never have possibly pictured what this time would look like. It just seems so foreign to me. And when I think about the next 5 years, I think about how we don't even know at all what they're even going to look like. And chances are, if I don't know what's going to happen in my next 5 years, you don't know what's going to happen in your next 5 years. And the truth is, it's going to go fast. It's like a snap of the fingers. Once you take a scale out far enough, you're going to see that this time moves really fast. And what we have right now is the next 5. In 2024, there's going to be another election. We're going to do this whole show again. It's going to be somebody else leading the show here. And I'm so excited to see what that visual creative looks like. And I'm so excited to see what y'all are going to make in the next 5 years. Because that's the most important thing when we think about it. We think about the next 5 years. We think about how fast it's going to go by. And we think about how little time we have and what a treat it is to be creatives at all. So if I can leave you with anything in this talk at all, it's this. Enjoy the next 5 years, make everything you possibly can, and just do some good while you're at it. You don't got to win an election. You can do anything. You can help when the pandemic ends. You can help climate. You can do anything in the world that you want to, but treat the next 5 years with complete joy and treat it with a profound specialty, because it's going to go by so fast, and I just can't wait to see what you're going to do. Thank you for coming to this talk. I really appreciate it, and thank you to Figma for having me. Cheers.